You're listening to Zoom the TBT with Charge and Hayner.
Hey guys, Charge and Hayner present Zoom the TBT, and we're completing our 4-pack of regional previews for the Wichita region. Charge, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing awesome. I mean, we've already knocked out 3 of the pods, and they've been exciting. The guests have been fantastic, and it just gets me even more excited for TBT 2021.
And we saved the best for last. Friends of the pod and presumptive number 1 seed, or not presumptive, actual number 1 seed, or long night, obviously, are representing the show tonight. We got co-GM Jacob Hirschmann of the Eberlein Drive here. Jake, what's going on, man?
Hey, happy to be here. Like I said, I am a super big fan of the pod. I was actually catching up on all the preview pods on Spotify over the past couple days. So happy to be here and dive a little deeper into these teams.
Yeah, it's a flattery will get you everywhere, Jake. Definitely. So, Charge, this is pretty interesting. On the left, we have a 1 seed tournament mainstays, and obviously one of the better rosters they've had as they rebuilt on the fly versus a very nifty and kind of tough NG Saints team. The committee did them no favors by giving them a very credible 16. What about that other side? What about the right, man?
Yeah, I mean, this is another great alumni team. And as you look through all the brackets, TBT, kind of matched up some non-alum versus non-alum, some alum versus alum. And there's just some really intriguing matchups. But Enchantment, we'll dig in their roster even deeper. But, I mean, just a really deep team. They're going to show up. Great fan base. Stillwater Stars, same thing. Markel Brown, got a great team behind them. And so this one here, Eberlein, assuming they get past the 16, you're once again into a really tough battle versus 8 and 9 Stillwater. These aren't typical 8-9 seeds you've seen in past TBTs. Continue to show the depth of what's happening in TBT 2021.
I mean, at least you guys dodged whatever they were doing with Peoria when it's an 8-seeded brotherly love. At least you're not in that nonsense thing, which would be insane, but still drives me nuts. Okay, so let's guess first. Let's get to our guess. So obviously the Eberlein and NG Saints matchup. Eberlein again, tournament mainstays, legends. Always competitive, always a great team against a new team of high school alums. It's an interesting concept. This is, I think, the first high school alum team. And NG Saints came on. They were a very credible guest on our speed dating show. Have a wonderful time, a good roster. But Jake, let's go to you first, opposed to asking giving us our thoughts. Talk about rebuilding this team on the fly. Obviously, losing Eberlein legend Jerome Randall to ALS on what we kind of hope is a 1-year soccer transfer, but I guess we'll find out. And losing a few other players from like Dusty Hanna going to Team Arkansas and JP McCurr going to zip them up. You lost a lot of really credible players and then just added just more incredible players. How are you and Matt able to rebuild this team so well in such a short period of time?
Yeah, it was definitely tough. It was definitely on a crunch schedule this year too, because a couple of those guys, like you said, Dusty and JP, we were talking to, but it's hard to turn down those alumni teams, and that's always something we're going to be fighting as one of those mainstay non-alumni teams. It's always something that's tough, and losing Randall to ALS, also tough. ALS kind of our biggest rival, but he called us and told us about that, and we respected his decision. And really most of the praise has to go to my co-GM Matt Mitchell, who he right off the bat locked us in with Raleigh Alkins and JP Tokido, and that was a really good base to help us recruit other players. And then kind of at that last second, we absorbed more or less KBC, the Kentucky Basketball Club, and got Jeremy Evans, Nick Mayo, Marcus Lee, LJ Coward, AJ Slaughter. And I mean, that really took our team from, watching your preview pods, somebody that probably was in that 4 to 6 range to a pretty strong number 1 seed. And it was a crazy last few days, but Matt's the ultimate recruiter, and a lot of these guys, really wanted to play with each other. Slaughter, Jeremy, and they even know Archie Goodwin and Marquise Teague. It's kind of crazy. I think there's only 2 or 3 guys on our rosters who didn't play college basketball in the state of Kentucky.
Yeah, no, that was quite the coup right at the end. I mean, that's probably one of the most dramatic TBT moments in 8 years, coming down to the deadline. And we won't make you go into too many of the details of how it all transpired and who's mad at who and all that fun stuff. But I mean, just an amazing kind of piece of drama that played out there. And you guys were obviously the beneficiaries of that. So congrats to you guys. I mean, that's what it's about, is putting your best foot forward and making a compelling case. And that's really what Eberlein Drive has come to. Same thing we talk about kimchi a lot is, you guys were some friends playing, had some some pros on your team early on, but to be able to pull these guys away from another very credible team with probably a lot of resources and high level was just amazing. So congrats to you guys. This blows me away.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate it. Like I said, it's been a grind. Us going from me playing with my buddies in year one and Matt playing with his NAIA college alumni team to us basically running this organization now. And that's really the way we view it. We've got myself and Matt kind of co-GMing it. Matt really kind of taking the forefront there. We've got two really good coaches and Cody Topper from Memphis and Justin Wetzel, who's been in the G League for a while. And go Tigers. And then also we've got kind of the fifth guy on our staff who we don't really talk about much, is Zach Hopp, who does all of our graphics. He's our lead scout, really great guy. And so we really view this as an organization that we've built from the ground up, and we're really proud of it.
And you should be, because this is, and it's interesting because we talked about how Eberlein is sort of the template for teams that aren't alums to really be credible, and how teams like Kimchi are starting to follow that template even more and become more credible. You guys have been, my understanding too, is also you guys are really a good part of the community. You guys actually do talk to other teams and help them navigate. I've heard from multiple teams that you guys have conversations and help people figure out how to navigate this. So you guys are not only like an OG team that's credible championship contenders, you guys really give back to the community and advice and help, and even like helping recruit other players. Like, I know that you guys are really a big part of the community. How do you view the community at large?
I mean, we love the TBT community, and we think it's really the best interest of everybody to work together. And there's been times, like you said, where we've had players who kind of just missed our cut or wanted to play our weekend but couldn't make our dates but could make another date, and we'll DM other teams and say, hey, these are guys we're looking for. Or if we know a certain team is reaching out to a player and we have their phone number, we're down to help them out. And there really doesn't need to be bad blood. JP McCura going from us to Zip 'em Up, we love Zip 'em Up. They're amazing on Twitter. And same thing with Dusty Hanna's. We've been interviewing the Team Arkansas GM, and it's all good there. And we're going to see all these guys in Wichita, in terms of Arkansas. And then, like you said, you got the teams like Kimchi and Mental Toughness, who, they're kind of just guys like Matt and I who started them, who love basketball, and we love seeing that. And we know TBT is always going to have a ton of alumni teams, but we love that teams kind of, like you said, off that Eberlein model, can kind of just prove that anybody can do TBT, because at its core, I think that's what TBT is all about. It started out as, this is a tournament open to anybody. If you're willing to put in the work, you can put a team in and you can win the $1 million+ And I think that's a thing that they shouldn't forget, and that we love seeing teams like Kimchi and Mental Toughness who, just basically create something out of literally nothing, and now have this team organization, this name that people recognize and can be proud of.
Hashtag your team's your tournament. I want to go back to the Memphis thing, because obviously I'm obsessed with my college team. And real quick, Coach Top is, you guys is a head coach, and he's currently the Memphis assistant. It's been on Twitter today, actually, that Penny is looking at going to Orlando, which will make me cry again this week, because I already had a bad week. But I want to make sure you guys understand, if Coach Top gets offered a head job, which I'd be okay with if Penny does leave, you guys understand he has to make recruiting calls during your tournament. He can't be screwing over the Memphis fan base. You guys got that, right?
Hey, of course. He knows Memphis always number one. Go Tigers, go always. Coach Topper is on top of his stuff more than almost anybody I know, so we're not worried about that.
All right. Hey, before we kind of dig into some of the other teams in this pod, obviously a lot of, great stuff on Eberlein that we want to dig into. Is this number one seed? So obviously me and Hayner have Florida TNT as our number one seed. So we got on here, a little awkward, but, it just seems like
it's not awkward. It's not awkward.
It's all good.
We have six number one seeds. We think
Eberlein obviously very deep. So what do you think it was? What differentiated you from TNT? I mean, a 5 seed still beyond ridiculous. I'm still not going to even say they're a 5 seed. But what do you think really differentiates you from a Florida TNT, and why you guys were deserving of that number one seed?
Well, I think first off is that TBT knows that we are an incredibly reliable team. The roster we put on that website, they know we're going to show up with that roster. I'm not saying Florida TNT does this, but there's always teams in the tournament that'll put names on a roster and you don't know if they're going to show up. And you guys have talked about
Washington.
Yeah. You guys have talked about it as much on your podcast. There's several teams that do that. And through the years we've shown we're not like that. Even if we get a big name, we get a Willie Reed, a James McAdoo, a Jeremy Evans. They're going to show up. And I think that, along with the fact that a lot of our guys have tournament experience, AJ Slaughter, Jeremy Evans, Archie Goodwin, LJ Coward, Nick Mayo, these guys have TBT experience. So I think that's also a really big thing. Reliability goes into the seeding, and TBT has to know that the team you're putting out there is a team that's going to show up. And so, just another team in our region, it's like LA Cheaters has a chance to be the best team in the region, but Derek Williams hasn't played in TBT before, so we don't really know. So, if he shows up, it makes a difference. But can you 100% be sure? You can't. But TBT knows that they can rely on us, and I think that's important.
Yeah, that's a great segue into
Washington broke Hager's heart. You were so into Washington this year, and they broke your heart.
That pisses me off. Well, it's the fucking half court league. I don't like the half court league. I like when basketball's played on a full court. I think that's what basketball. I mean, look, you got to cross the timeline. You got to be able to defend the full court. You got to be able to get transition. Like if you're just gonna play half court, I don't give a fuck. I think this whole thing's dumb. But that's my own personal beef with the whole thing. Talking about the first year teams, that was a great segue into you're a very credible opponent. Let's be clear. This is not a typical 16 seed because much like you guys, they are able to cast a wide net. They're an alumni team, but they're a high school alumni team, which means there's a lot of great ballers out of Philly. And like a lot of Philly teams have gone to the West. A lot of them gone to Wichita. A lot of them have gone to Peoria. A lot of them have dodged Columbus and Charleston, which are closer teams. So you're looking at this NG Saints team. Again, stats by TBT Thoughts. Thanks a lot, man. There's a lot of credible players. Jardine was a great guard for Syracuse. Tyreek Duran's a really solid player in Hungary. He put up, almost 18 a game in 27 starts in a credible league. But what's interesting about this is, unlike your team, this is where it gets interesting about seeing the years. A lot of these guys haven't played recently. So it's a little an older team. So Jake, how do you prepare for guys who are obviously a credible team and have a lot of talent, but how are you going to use that sort of lack of recent ball experience against them, you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely the one thing that really stands out about them. As you said, them being a high school alumni team and all of them being really close, you can feel confident that they're all going to show up and be there. So, then it comes down to, like I said, how can we attack them? And, while we're all still trying to figure all that out, I think the big thing is just going to be all our guys are coming off seasons, and they should be, at the peak of their athleticism in better shape. And, I've listened to Scoop Jardine on the podcast, and, I'm familiar with Rick Jackson, Scooter Gillette, Wally Hepburn, all these guys. So, I'm familiar with their games, but it's going to be kind of a little bit of an unknown because we haven't seen them necessarily at the highest level recently. So it's like, I don't know if Scoop Jardine's going to show up in not the best shape or if he's going to show up having worked out harder than he ever has for these last 3 months. And so, that's something we can't really be sure of, but all we can do is just kind of look at the tape and the stats that we have and kind of play off that.
Yeah, and what's interesting, which I didn't know a lot about the Saints before we started digging in for the podcast, but we talked about the age of the Saints, but these guys have a lot of young guys on that team as well. So I think it's going to be interesting, the Rick Jacksons, the Scoop Jardines, and, Jaquan Newton. These guys they're proven winners, winning championship after championship after championship. So if these young guys can rise to the occasion and really kind of play at a level up, this is going to a team that can give you guys a little bit of a push. And they also got Durant off the 20th and only. So I find an intriguing squad. I think it's a tough matchup, and we'll go into our selections here shortly. But another one, you just cannot go into this game lightly.
Yeah, I think that's something we've learned in TBT year in and year out is no matter who it is, you can't take them lightly. I mean, from the second year we were in TBT, we got a bye. We were so confident. That's when we had Von Wafer and we had, what we thought was a really, really good team. And we got beat by the Scotty Legends, who were a bunch of 40-year-olds who rained threes on us. And then 2 years ago, we were the 1 seed after making the final. And we were down 8 points in the Elam ending to Team Utah. And 100% should have lost the game, but we got lucky and came back. And you cannot take anybody lightly, be it a 16 seed or a 1 seed or a 2 seed. So we'll be ready. We know that we can't take these guys lightly.
Now that's a good segue though, because you can't take them lightly. You are the favorite, so you would be playing either the Enchantment or Stillwater unless NG Saints pull off an historic upset. So look at this matchup chart. This is kind of the inverse. We have two non-alum teams, one that's new, one that's a TBT legend in the Drive. And now you have two relatively youthful alumni teams with pretty passionate fan bases. Now, I know you're pretty high on the Enchantment. You want to kind of tell us why?
Yeah, I've been really enjoying kind of looking at this team throughout the process. They were one of the early entrants. Some teams did show up late to the game, but these guys pretty much announced their team, I think, months even before the application period, and just a deep team. So as you start going through this team, it's not I got two or three guys. They're very deep. They got Gordon and Giddens, obviously. A big fan of Antino Jackson. Played for Akron, and as you go down the list, these are guys. Once again, and every team has just a stable of professionals on their team. And so this is another one. I think the depth of this team is what's going to separate them without revealing my pick. I think, no one's talking about the Enchantment, but I think they've got some handful of, high level players that are going to stand out. But I think the depth of this team is what's really going to separate them in some of their matchups.
Yeah, I think the depth is definitely a big thing. Also, the Enchantment, New Mexico has one of the more underappreciated elite fan bases in America. Like, I don't know if people understand how great Lobos fans are. I don't like the fact that they're not even in the national consciousness anymore. So it drives me nuts. So I would really love to see the Enchantment have a credible team here in their first year. The Stillwater Stars, on their hand, obviously they got their virginity taken from them in TBT last year. They were a last year team, obviously. So they've done it before, which is credible in this because of first year alums. Again, the one rule, we're going to have Magic Juan on at some point to talk about gambling, but the reality is like betting against first year alumni teams is about the easiest money in TBT you can get. So as deep as the Enchantment is, I'm still kind of thinking the Stars might have some guys with TBT experience. They might have done it before. They have some different levels of experience that might help them around a guy like Markel Brown, who scored 13 in Israel. You got guys like that who are really credible players. You got, Michael Qualls, who was on Team Arkansas and now isn't. And he's put up, 32 in the Philippines. So you got some pretty good scorers on that team. Charge, you look skeptical, though.
Yeah, I'm not buying your whole first-year alumni team thing. I think you're waiting to war Tampa debacle last year a little too heavy because you got teams like House of Pain, Purdue played really well last year. So I think there's probably more cases of first-year teams, and obviously TMT last year, they weren't a first year team, but they were kind of formed and kind of crashed and burned. But I really think it's really about the program. I think if the organization's there, they do the right training camp, they do the right team building. That's what the difference is, and we don't necessarily have a full peek behind the scenes on which teams are doing that. Last year was just chaos all around. So you can throw out that logic anywhere you go. But I think in this case, these guys are really tight, really close. I wish they had Alex Kirk, former, Stickman guy, not a Neverline guy, but or actually, Kirk's probably played 2 years with you, or was committed. I know he couldn't play the 1 year, but that's the only thing missing from the Enchantment. If Kirk was there, this is a slam dunk for Enchantment. But we'll see how this game goes. But I just think Enchantment is going to be so good, so cohesive, so deep. I think this is going to be a runaway for Enchantment, and I just gave up my pick like I always do.
Yeah, you're really bad at this whole television concept of like leaving something on the bone. You're terrible. That's fine. You're a good host otherwise. So Jake, looking at these teams, how would you prep for these? Like, one advantage of being the 1 seed is you get a 16 seed. The disadvantage is like the Enchantment and Stillwater get to kind of look ahead a bit to you if they win, because the reality is they can start prepping assuming you win. You've got no idea who you're playing 2 days later, literally none. So do you have like an event like you guys have doing scouting on both teams early on?
Yeah, so we're scouting the Enchantment, Stillwater Stars, and the NG Saints right now. Just because, like you guys said, it's really is kind of a toss-up. The Enchantment, while they are a first-year TBT team, everything they've shown on social media with their players and their fan base is that pretty much every single player is locked in, and they're doing already scrimmages and stuff at New Mexico, I know, and so we know they're going to be the real deal. And I can say I am happy not to see Kirk there because he's a great player. And the year we made the championship, he was only able to play the first 3 games with us, but he was huge in those games, getting us out of our region. And he's a great player. And, kind of sucks he can't play, but also very good for us.
Yeah. So sorry about that.
It's all good. And then the Stillwater Stars, obviously, like you said, having the TBT experience. There's somebody who kind of helps. We did scout them last year because we had the potential to play them before we were obviously kicked out for COVID. But, obviously we got some returning guys. Getting Markel was obviously a huge addition. But what's interesting too is, last year they were really carried by LeBrian Nash, and he's gone. And so it'll be interesting to see kind of how the dynamic is different this year without him.
Also, they also don't have Phil Forte. I think is he coaching this time as opposed to playing, I think.
I believe so.
Yeah. Charge, you had something else?
Yeah, no, you mentioned COVID last year. So obviously we're not out of the woods on COVID yet this year, Jake. And so I know TBT is really pushing to get the vaccinations, and there still is risk of teams getting booted from the tournament. So, and your call if you're able to disclose, but I know there were some benefits to getting more than 75 or 80% of your team vaccinated. So you feel a lot better about your position now. And as you selected players, is this something you considered just to not fall in that pit again this year?
Yeah, it's definitely something we considered. We didn't make it a mandate by any means, but if there was ever kind of like a 50-50 or it was close, taking a guy who was vaccinated definitely was the priority, just because, like you said, there are these thresholds that TBT set where, if you get over a certain threshold, you don't have to go through testing and some other stuff. It's all laid out in much more detail than I even know without looking at it. But, it was definitely a consideration, not only for us, but I know speaking to other teams that it was something that pretty much everybody had to consider.
Yeah, it's crazy. And actually, it's funny because we've been taping this evening. This is the fourth of our segments, and I don't know what order we'll release them in, so you might be seeing this one first. Who knows? But the reality is that it's the first time we mentioned COVID tonight, actually, which is interesting. It's the difference a year makes. I mean, get your vaccines, guys. I mean, you can help in this crap, seriously. So let's go to the picks. I think it's a fairly fair thing to say that there's not a big surprise on who picked Eberlein versus NG. That's a fairly safe bet. No one's got the stones. We saw a tweet actually by the nice people at NG Saints asking who had the guts to pick a 16 seed, and apparently none of us do. But the Enchantment Stillwater thing, we kind of beat this death a bit about the experience thing. I'm actually kind of feeling a little dumb about my pick, honestly, after hearing the idea that you guys are doing some scouting and hearing about how Enchantment looks together, because maybe I am weighing too much on the War Ready thing. I mean, there's no team in the tournament with more pressure on them, I think, than War Ready, because they really need a win to validate after last year. But Charge, like, what does NC have to, what do the Saints have to do to pull off this upset? Like, how can they beat Eberlein?
Yeah, I mean, it really is. They just got to come in and play together and play flawless. There's going to be no room for error. I mean, Jake kind of highlighted a couple of the pieces that if Newman Goretti was going to find a crack in the armor, is Eberlein got this mix of players who thought they had some roles on KBC and some minutes planned out on KBC that they may or may not have on Eberlein. So is this the money team version 2? And Eberlein's got a history of starting a little slow. They've stuck by in a lot of games that they should have won. So, I think that gives Newman a little bit of confidence and that they can go in there and, try to catch these guys off guard. I think the talent is obviously much deeper at Eberlein. I think they're going to win the game, but, there could be a couple cracks in the armor if Eberlein doesn't show up and, can't get the team cohesive.
So Jake, real quick, can we see a point shaving scandal here? Because like Eberlein's probably going to end up like an 11-point favorite. Like, could you tell us maybe with a wink or a thing, if you're going to maybe, if it's an 11-point thing, make it a 9-point win? Can you kind of tell our fans like what you think? Like, is there some point shaving? Like, just give us a clue.
As Charge said, we've made a lot of games a lot closer than they should have been. So I'm not trying to keep this one close if possible. I would much rather win by 40 than deal with a little point shaving here or there. Just give us the big win. Let us be comfortable, please.
Okay, so don't bet on point shaving. Definitely. Charge, anywhere else we need to go here? Or we basically closed out Wichita pretty strong?
Yeah, I mean, with Eberlein, we talked about it. Enchantment. Like I said, I'm feeling really, really good about this team. So if it comes to fruition, once again, you can't jump ahead of the matchups, but an Eberlein Enchantment matchup, I think, would be kind of fierce. The competition would be great, physical matchup. And so, and you mentioned about your pick in War Tampa, but we got to give Matt Crawford credit. I mean, he was nailing pick after pick after pick last year, and has a really good record and good history to pick. So
that's fantastic. So I don't think Matt can read.
Yeah, which we found out, which apparently none of us knew that the TBT printable bracket was in the article, of course, so not many of us read really well that time. But if Matt Crawford's picking Stillwater Stars, then maybe the rest of us have a little something else to think about. He's got a great track record and appreciate him contributing to the pod. And of course, Brandon's been on last year, appreciate him. And obviously West Coast Ronin, who, they were one of those last teams out out, contributing to the pod as well this year. So appreciate all three of those guys.
Absolutely. Again, thanks to TBT Thoughts for coming by. Jake, we're really excited about seeing the drive this next year. This next couple weeks. So can't wait. It should be a lot of fun. We kind of wish we were in Wichita. I mean, we want to just clone ourselves and go to all of them, but we can't quite do that, obviously. So try to get a date and so we can watch you guys there. Okay.
We will do our very best. And, if we get there, we cannot wait to finally meet you guys in person.
All right. Jake from Eberlein Drive. Thanks for coming by. This
Absolutely.
has been Zoom the TBT.
Hope you enjoyed listening to Zoom the TBT with Charge and Hainer. Subscribe to YouTube, follow on Twitter, and give us your money.